Now, good to have you all here. I hope you enjoy our studies in Hebrew. And we just finished our grammar school for our Dutchies to help us understand what's going on, etc. So, and to get a better understanding of the Hebrew. For me, myself, I noticed that when I do all these repetitions of all these grammatical terms, that when I go to the Hebrew lessons, then I get a better picture of what is being meant, because now I can see what is going on in my own language, and then I can say, oh, this is what it's going to be. Okay, now I have to change something. I do a little bit of repetition because I think repetition and exercise are the main ingredients for learning a new language, especially when we are non-native speakers. Well, you always learn a new language when you're a non-native speaker. So, okay, the last time, let's have a look about the article. We looked at a video for the article. And to recap that for a little bit, now we have to do this. This is Hebrew. Hebrew on the 14th of July. The article in Hebrew, and remember, is only definitive. A definitive article. So there is no indefinitive article in Hebrew. That means that if you see the word like this, or, and there is no article here, it can also mean a light. Normally it means light. Vaya Elohim Yehi Or Vehi Or, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. But in other sentences, when there is no article standing there, it could also mean a light. So, oh, I need to close this. If you have the light in Hebrew, you get ha or. That's just an example. Or ha. Oh. Do you know what it says? Anybody?
The noun.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's go to the lesson, because the definite article doubles the first letter. You can see here. Now, new share. Let's have a look. QuickTime 505. That's this one. Yeah, it works. Go down. The article.
Ronald? Er zit geen geluid bij de video.
Uh-oh. Okay. Thank you. Take 2. I forgot something. Ta-da! Let's try again.
The article. This is the first module that we'll have on the article. We'll have at least one more going into more detail, but here I'll introduce it. The article in Hebrew, well, the article in English, we have 2 articles in English. We have definite, the, and we have indefinite, a or an. Hebrew has the definite article. It does not have an indefinite article. So if you have a word like bayit, which means house, without the article, then you would simply translate it as house or a house, depending on context. So it's the absence of the article that allows you to sort of have this indefinite state. Now, let's take a look at the article itself. The article has 3 parts to it. It has a hey, a patach, and a dagesh forte in the following letter. It never stands by itself, like le, be, and que, like the inseparable prepositions le, be, and que that we dealt with earlier. It's always attached to the article that it governs, the word that it governs. So your word would be sitting here, and the dagesh forte would fall in the consonant of the first consonant of the word. Now I like to emphasize that the article has 3 parts, because I find that students tend to forget the dagesh forte, and they just think about these 2 parts. So the first part is our consonant. Second part is a vowel, and we'll find that this vowel will change under different conditions, and that's what we'll deal with when we look at our next module on the article. But the basic form is this patach here. And the third part that people always forget, number 3, this is 1, 2, 3, the third part is this dagesh forte. So the following letter is doubled. That's what dagesh forte does. So 3 parts to the article, and the article attaches to words as a prefix, just like le, be, and que. Now let's take a look at a couple of examples. I guess we could, well, let's do kol. Kol means voice. So that's kol without the article. If we add the article, there's 3 parts to it. So we have our hey, we have our patach, and we have our dagesh forte. So 1, 2, 3. This means the voice. Without it, it would have been voice or a voice. If the word has a, davar, has a dagesh lene in it. Let me rewrite my resh here carefully. Okay, dagesh lene, remember, is a dagesh, the weak dagesh that shows up in the begad kafat letters, and d is one of the begad kafat letters, the dalet. So here we have a dagesh lene, davar. This word means word. If we put an article on it, then your dagesh lene effectively changes to a dagesh forte. Visually, nothing has changed, but you don't put 2 dots. You just put the 1 dot.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I mute my mic when the video is on. So this is consistent with the rules for dagesh lene, because the dagesh lene runs away after a vowel. Remember in the previous lesson, as soon as there is a vowel preceding the dagesh lene goes away. So because there is a vowel here, a patach, you know that this is a dagesh forte, which means that the dalet doubles. That's why the rule for dagesh lene is so important. When you see a begad kafat letter with a dagesh in it, you first have to understand, is it pronunciation dot or is it a doubling dot? Because only at the begatkevat letters you have pronunciation and you have the possibility of doubling. And the basic rule is a dagesh learner runs away after a vowel, even the schwa. When there is a schwa, dagesh learner is gone. So when you see a begatkevat letter inside a word, not at the beginning, because at the beginning it's always a lene, but when you see a begatkevat letter inside a word and there is a preceding vowel and there is still a dot, then it's a double. I just wanted to pause here. What do I do? And now I have to wipe it all off. Ta-da. Ta-da. There we go. I just wanted to remind you that these rules that we had before helps you understand why this is a forte.
Similarly, the word bayit, which I showed earlier, the last screen, bayit, house. Here we have a dagesh lene, same thing as this. You put article on, you get habayit. So 1, 2, 3, 3 parts to it. Okay, so that's the dagesh, or the definite article. We have a definite article, no indefinite article. In Hebrew, it's a prefix form, has 3 parts to it.
Okay, I need to help somebody logging in. Where's the link? Where can I find the link? Invite, copy link. When you would transcribe this, davar is D, but hadavar becomes syllable division and the same with bayit. When it's alone, it's a dagesh forte. But when you double it, you get ha, ba, yit. Let's have a look, all correct. And this is a hard B, habayit. Yeah, you see, it doubles. Double B, double D. And this one, call, becomes hak, call. Double Q, hak, call. And this is hash, sha, mayim. Okay. Stop share. Can you hear me? Okay. I always forget. Okay, this was the lesson about the article. Now we go to the next lesson, also a repetition from last week, is the article plus inseparable preposition. In Dutch it means onafscheidelijk voorzetsel. Dus het lidwoord. Because in Hebrew, the inseparable prepositions le, be, and que are always connected to the noun. Important to understand. An inseparable preposition is connected to the noun. So they are inseparable. They are one unit. They become one unit. Let's use that word. We say in the beginning. And now it's starting to get interesting because we have here a preposition. Here we have an article. And here we have a noun. So what happens in Hebrew when you start combining this, when you start combining the inseparable preposition be together with the article ha and the noun begin. In Hebrew, that is rishot. So let's see what he has to say about this. This one goes away. That is not also use of the article. Where are you? New share. That will be better. Quiescence. Yeah. Okay, this is the lesson, article and inseparable preposition.
The article and inseparable prepositions. This module looks at what happens when you add both an article, the definite article, and the inseparable prepositions to a word. So let's first write up our article here. Remember, the article has three parts: the hey, the patach, and a doubling of the next consonant, the dagash forte. And our inseparable prepositions are, if you remember, b, k, and le. Now, why do these two have a dot and this one doesn't? Do you remember? These are both begad kafat letters. So this is a dagash lene. This is the weak dagash. Unlike this is the strong dagash. And this is not a begad kafat letter, so it doesn't have a dagash in it. So, what happens when you add these two, this plus one of these, to a word? Well, let's look at a word. Let's look at the word sefer. Sefer. And I want to copy this a number of times to illustrate this. So let's move this over about here and down. And let's do one more over here. Okay. And let's also change our color. Go with green. Okay, here we have a word sefer, meaning book, without the article or the inseparable prepositions. There's nothing on it. Indefinite, a book or book. Let's add the article first of all. So if we add ha here, the article would be part 1, part 2, and we double. Okay? So there's ha sefer. Now if we were, and I'm going to change my color one more time. Red means illegal. This is not what it's going to look like, but let's put b on here. You would think it would look something like this. B ha sefer. But in fact, that's not what happens. What happens instead is that the hey drops and the b takes its place. So the hey is replaced with b, le, or k, and whatever vowel is under the article stays there. Now right now it's a patach. We'll see later in later modules that this can change to various things. But whatever it is there, whether it's patach or anything else, it'll stay there and the b will just take its place. So all we do is we write whatever this is here, it still keeps its dagesh lene, and the article stays, or rather the vowel stays, and dagesh forte stays. So if you want to know what the inseparable preposition plus the article looks like, just replace he with one of these, and you'll have it. Sefer, ha-sefer, and ba-sefer. Ha-sefer, ba-sefer. Now without it, just to be complete here, without the article, it would look like this. Ba-sefer. No dagesh forte, and you'd have the shava. So in terms of pronunciation, ha-sefer, ba-sefer, ka-sefer, la-sefer. That's what's going on. Pretty straightforward, really.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions about this lesson? Very straightforward. What happens is that, I hope you can see this, notate. The inseparable preposition and the article are combined to one word, where one letter, where the vowel here, the shava, disappears and the petach stays. That's all there is. So the difference between bashefer and bushefer is in the book, and this is in a book. So what you see here is, can you imagine what happens when we wouldn't have the Masoret signs in the original language? Because the Masoretes invented all these little symbols in the language to help you understand what a word means. So is it in a book or in the book is a great difference in translation. Do you understand that? The only difference in writing is the shava and the petach. But before the Masoretes came, this was not in the language. All these signs, these scribbles here, were not in the language, which means you had to read from the context and understand if it is in the book or in a book. That means that there are multiple interpretations possible depending on how you read the text. And that's why the Hebrew language and translation of Hebrew language is not a done deal when you have one translation. Because one translation takes a word or a symbol in a certain way. Do you get the importance of this? It's a small difference, the petach or the shava, but it is a difference in meaning. And the same we had last time with the mapik, the hay with the dot in it. When the dot is not there, it could be king, but if the dot is there, it is her king. It changes. So that's why it is important to read very carefully when you read your text. That's what I wanted to say about this. Hooray! Now there is another lesson about articles, and he tells us in 4 different ways how the article is going to be used. So he tells us 4 different ways. Oh, this is 4, not this. 4 different ways how the article can be used, and it's very helpful.
Uses of the article. So how is the article used? Article meaning this here, right? Well, it's dagesh forte. I'm going to outline 4 ways. The first is the basic way. A definite article specifies a noun. It tells you which noun. So if you write HaMelech, the king, HaMelech, means simply the king. It specifies the king. Not any old king, but the king. Not some king, but the king. Okay, first use, common use. Number two, it can stand for the demonstrative. Demonstrative.
It is, in Dutch, it is aanwijzend. De, die, deze of dit. Demonstrative is aanwijzend.
In fact, historically, it appears that the article was a weak demonstrative. What is a demonstrative? A demonstrative is a pointing word, a word that points out something, like this, or that, or these, or those. Now, we'll take a look at demonstrative adjectives and pronouns in a later chapter and module, but the article can sometimes function this way. A good example, and a common example, is hayom. Yom means day, and so hayom means the day, but in some contexts it can mean this day. Oops, this day or today. So it's context that will tell you whether the article is functioning as a demonstrative, this day or today, or whether it's just a plain old specifying a noun, the day. Okay, that's use number two as a demonstrative. Use number three. Three is the article can be used with collective nouns or abstract nouns. So a word like zahav, zahav means gold. We put a ha on there. Hazahav, it means the gold, but sometimes you want to translate it simply as gold. It's a collective noun, and the article, you don't always want to say the gold. Sometimes it makes more sense to just say gold. So that's an example of the article.
In Dutch, we have discussed it in the grammar lessons. You have a concrete, concrete zelfstandig naamwoorden en abstracte zelfstandig naamwoorden. Concreet is iets wat je kan beetpakken en abstract is een begrip. Wijsheid, inzicht, begrip. Goud, zilver, boom, dat kun je beetpakken. Sorry for the English, but I have to do...
On a collective noun. Chokhmah, which we've seen before, meaning wisdom. Chokhmah with the article on it, ha. Now here we're jumping ahead a little bit because you can't double a guttural, so there's no doubling there, but we'll deal with that in a later module. What I want to illustrate here is that this is an abstract noun, wisdom. Wisdom. And there's an example in Job. This is from Job, what is it? 28:12. Where you probably don't want to say the wisdom, you just want to say wisdom. The verse goes something like this: where shall wisdom be found? Where is the place of understanding? So you don't say where shall the wisdom be found, but where shall wisdom be found? Here we have an abstract noun with an article. So that can happen. Article can go with collectives or abstracts, abstract nouns. And fourthly, the article can be used as a vocative. Now vocative simply means direct address. It's when you're speaking directly to someone. So we had before hamelech, hamelech. It's getting messy here. That can mean the king, but it could also mean O king. O king, forgive me my debt towards you, or something. So when a person is talking directly to the king, the article could mean a vocative. So you'll probably see this use mostly in direct speech, because that's where you're going to find vocatives. So 4 uses. First is the regular specifying a noun. This is the regular use of the article. Second use is as a demonstrative on some words in some context.
Has anybody seen the mistake he made? Ik hoor je niet, Leonard.
Forte heeft hij niet gedaan met de 1.
Juist. Have you seen it? He has forgotten the dot. He forgot the dagesh forte, which means that it is ham, syllable division, me, syllable division, leg, two mems. He forgot him. He forgot him. So thank God we know Charles is also just as us, making mistakes sometimes.
The article. Second use is as a demonstrative on some words in some context. You'll want to translate it as a demonstrative, for instance, this day or today rather than the day. Sometimes with a collective, you want to just translate the noun without the article, gold rather than the gold, or with an abstract, you want to say wisdom rather than the wisdom. And lastly, as a vocative, you want to say, O king, rather than just the king. And it's context that will tell you the difference between these different uses.
Ronald?
Ja,
Bij 2, bij die youth, hoort dat puntje daar helemaal in het hoekje of moet hij gewoon meer in het midden staan?
no, it's misschien iets groter, a little bit bigger. The question is, should it be in the corner?
Ja, is goed.
It's like this. So again, hi, yom. Doubling of the letters. So it's a little bit, yeah, it's how quickly he writes. But sometimes you see this in the Hebrew also. You see words like a doubling and then a yud and another yud next to it. So I don't have an example, but it is what I do have as an example is this one, the text he referred to. Oh, this is Job. Hope you can see it. Job 28, and here, but wisdom, you can see it over here. Maybe it's not so good to see. Go back, make it a little bit bigger. Stop annotating. Click. Here we see there is this v is and or but here we see ha, chach, ma. And this should be the syllable decision. No, sorry, wrong one. Ha, chach, ma. V, ha, chach, ma. But wisdom, and not but the wisdom. And why? Because wisdom is abstract. So this is everything from chapter 5. In our Dropbox, you can find all the lessons and all the pictures that we make in the Dropbox folder of chapter 5. So now we proceed with the next chapter. This is chapter 6 or lesson 6, and it's about Quiescent letter. Very interesting because it answered to me some questions that I had about when I transliterated the word. So it helped me to understand what a quiescence letter is, and a quiescence letter is a letter that doesn't say anything because it's quiet.
Ra-el.
Oh,
And what I want to look at actively means quiescent letters. What is quiescence? Quiescence effectively means to become silent. In our context here, what we're talking about are consonants that cease to function as consonants. They become silent, and they tend to blend with the previous vowel. Now there are 4 consonants in Hebrew that can do this. He, Yud, Vav, and Aleph. Now, have we seen these consonants before as a group, or at least some of them? These ones here should look familiar to you. These are our matrix lectiones. If you remember, back to our vowel chart, we had these at the top. He was associated with the A vowels, IE with, or Yud with the IE vowels, and Vav with the OU vowels.
Microfoon.
here we see matrix lectiones. Thank you. Matrix lectiones. The He, the Yud, and the Vav. The He is with A vowels, the Yud with E and I vowels, and the Vav with O and U vowels. So that's what he's saying in this other, what he's talking about. There's He, Yud, and Vav are what we call mother letters. They are able to carry a vowel. When they carry a vowel, you do not write the He, but it is a combination He with patach of kametz. He with patach, He with kametz is an A vowel. Sere Yud is an E vowel. Chirek Yud is an I vowel. Cholem Vav is a O vowel. And Shurech is a U vowel. So you do not transcribe these letters, but they are part of the vowel. And just wanted to show you, perhaps maybe you've forgotten, but this is the characterization of the vowels. Mother vowels, matrix lectiones, they are able to carry a vowel and A, E, I, O, U. So now go back to what he has to say. Where is it?
And these are the consonants that were used, sometimes as consonants and sometimes to mark vowels. When they are used as vowels, they're called matrix or matrix lectiones. Now, it's not surprising then that these are the ones that can quiesce. They can cease to function as a consonant and blend with the previous vowel. Now what about Aleph? Aleph actually can also be a mater. We didn't talk about that before, and it's not that common, but in a word like Shena, which means to sleep, the Aleph here is functioning vocalically, together with our comets, as a vowel. So Aleph too can function as a mater, which is consistent with what we have here with these ones. Now let's look at an English example of quiescence. These consonants will tend to quiesce at the end of a syllable, not at the beginning. And we see that also in English. If you look at the word table, and we look at the word depot, in table we have a T at the beginning of a word, and it's functioning as a consonant. We hear the sound T. In depot, it has become silent, and it's at the end of a word, and therefore the end of a syllable. Depot, we don't say depot. So we have similar behavior in English. Now let's take a look at a Hebrew example. First, let me write up this word, Yisrael, which we've used. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Let's get it right here. Yis starts with Hidik. Yis, Ra, Yisrael. Okay, so we have Yis, Va'el. And what I want to look at here is Aleph. Here we have Aleph at the beginning of a syllable, and it is functioning as a consonant. It's holding the position of a consonant. This is a CVC syllable. Now let's look at another word, Yish. Yish Ma El, and this has an ayin in it, and then an aleph, and then a lamed. So Yish Ma El, Ishmael. Now if we look at this last consonant here, it looks kind of funny, or this last syllable. We have a C, V, C, C. C, V, C, C. Well, what kind of syllable is that in Hebrew? We don't have that. And the reason it looks like CVC, but it's not, because this one here is the Aleph, and the Aleph is quiescent, so it's not functioning as a consonant there. Now you can often tell a quiescent Aleph because it won't have a vowel under it. Notice this one has a vowel under it, this one doesn't. So if you see an Aleph without a vowel under it, particularly if it's in the middle, or it appears to be in the middle of a syllable, or sometimes at the end, then you probably have a quiescent Aleph. Let's take a look at another example. This is Reshit. Oops. Re. Reshit. Reshit means beginning. The first word in the Bible is Bereshit, which is puts b in front of this, in the beginning. Reshit, the syllable is here, syllable division, and here we have a quiescent Aleph at the end, and it has no vowel under it. So Aleph will quiesce, and you can tell because it doesn't have the vowel. Now, at the beginning of a consonant, at the beginning of a syllable, it's a consonant. At the end of a syllable is where it quiesces. What will often happen is there'll be a change in a word that will cause an Aleph to move from the beginning to the end, and then quiesce. And this happens frequently when you add an inseparable preposition. If you have a word, just imagine this is our word, and we have an Aleph at the beginning. If we add a l, b, or k, what will sometimes happen is this l will steal this first letter as part of its syllable, and so now this letter finds itself at the end of a syllable. Without the l, it was at the beginning. And so when you put l or b or k on a word beginning with aleph, the aleph may well quiesce because now it finds itself at the end of a syllable. Let's look at an example. Now I need a lot of space here, so I'm going to write at the top Elohim is the word I want here. God. Elo. And actually I'm going to copy this, so we need it 4 times. Let's see if we can fit it on this page. 2, 3, 4. It's a little squished, but okay. What happens if we add an inseparable preposition like l on here? Well, the first thing we have to do is we notice here we have 2 shavas at the beginning of a word. And when we have that, we need to apply our rule of shava. So by way of review, we had 2 rules of shava. One was where we have 2 simple shavas at the beginning of a word. And when we have that, the first shava becomes a hiddick, and the second one goes silent. If we have a compound shava, like a chataf sagol and a regular shava, then what happens, you remember? This one, the first shava, becomes the short vowel that corresponds to the compound shava. So in this case, sagol. So this one changes to sagol, and the second one stays. So let's apply our rule of shava. Put our l there again, and this becomes sagol. So le Elohim becomes le Elohim. So our step here is rule of shava. Now, what happens is this finds itself now at the end of a syllable, and in this case it quiesces. So let's repeat our le here, and let's erase. If it quiesces, it loses its vowel. So we'll erase it. So this step is quiescence. Quiescence of the Aleph. Now, what often happens with Aleph, as opposed to the other quiescent letters, is that when Aleph quiesces, you will frequently get, or often get, compensatory lengthening. So, what that means is, let me erase this here. It's already quiesced, so we've lost that. We've lost a vowel, so it makes things shorter, so this is going to lengthen now to compensate. Try and keep the same overall length. And if you're going to lengthen a sagol, what are you going to get? It's going to lengthen its family. Remember our vowel chart? We had sagol, and above it we had tsere. So, this is going to become a tsere. So this here is compensatory lengthening. Now, these are all the steps that happen that explain what a person would do naturally if they were speaking. Le Elohim is harder to say than Lelohim. But what we have here is a rule of shava, we have quiescence, then we have compensatory lengthening. Okay, now it doesn't always happen. Aleph will not always quiesce. Let me look at a very similar example, but a case where it does not quiesce.
Ronald, we horen je niet.
Okay, you hear me now? Okay, sorry. I want just pause the record because there's a lot of information in here, and what happens is the steps that are taken when you put an inseparable preposition before a word that begins with an Aleph. And we don't see this ever, we only see this. This is what you see in scripture. Lelohim. But he explains when you are applying every rule, consequently, you will get from Le Elohim to Lelohim. And it means that a syllable division is over here. Daar. Bij de water. So you get, this is now a syllable, this. But this has become a syllable, while there were first two syllables. Syllable division would be here. So it changes. And that's why I wanted to pause here to make it sure you understand what's going on here. That from Le Elohim it becomes Lelohim. And the syllable division shifts. The Aleph is now quiet. Need to wipe this all out because it will interfere with all the videos. But I hope you don't mind that I paused it for a little bit to help you better understand what was going on.
Okay, now it doesn't always happen. Aleph will not always quiesce. Let me look at a very similar example, but a case where it does not quiesce. And this is the word, all these little dashes, Edom. You have the very same beginning. Edom means Edom. Okay, make sure I spelled that right. Edom. If we add le on there, we're going to do the same step we did before. Let me rewrite this here. Edom. So we need to apply the rule of Shava because we have two Shavas at the beginning of a word. So as before, this will become Sagol, but then it stops. Le Edom. That's how you say it. This does not quiesce. So Aleph does not always quiesce. And the purpose of this module is not to try and explain the rules for when it quiesces, but rather to explain what's happening so that you can recognize it when you see it. Now let's take a look at one of the other letters. Similar behavior with the Yud. And we'll look at the word Yehuda. Yehuda. Judah. And let me copy this one as well. I think we only need this 3 times. 2, 3. And let us add our inseparable preposition as before. So we're adding an inseparable preposition. So we have to apply the rule of Shava. In this case, we apply the first rule because we have 2 simple Shavas. So the first one becomes a Hidik and the second one becomes silent. Le Yehuda becomes Li Yehuda, or something like that. I don't know how you would pronounce that. Li Yehuda, perhaps. But the Yud now quiesces. So this is rule of Shava. And as with the Aleph now, the Yud finds itself at the end of a syllable. Here it was at the beginning before we added this. Now it's at the end. Yud can quiesce. In fact, it does. It loses its consonantal value and starts to function. It functions as a vowel. So let's put this down. Let's erase our... Where's the erase? E. We'll erase our Shava under the Yud. And now we have Lihuda. So this is quiescence. And we don't have any compensatory lengthening as we did with the Aleph. So now we have Hidik Yud. Before we just had Hidik. And the Yud now is part of the vowel, Hidik Yud, as opposed to functioning as a consonant, which it was with the word by itself, Yehuda. So there's an example of quiescence with the letter Yud. Now Aleph will quiesce more frequently than Yud and Vav. There are more examples of Yud and Vav at the end of a word where it's not quiescing. For example, the word dai, which means enough, or goy. How do you spell goy? Goy, nation. There we have a Yud at the end, and it's functioning as a consonant. Or tzav. There you have a Vav at the end, functioning as a consonant. Tzav means command. It's the word to command in the imperative form. So you're telling someone, command these other people to do whatever. Command. So, by way of review, we have 4 consonants, He, Yud, Vav, and Aleph, that can function as, or can lose their consonantal value. They can quiesce, they can cease to function as consonants, they'll blend with the previous vowel, and this tends to happen at the end of syllables. And with Aleph, you will also sometimes get quiescent or compensatory lengthening. It will lose its vowel underneath it, and the vowel before it will lengthen.
Can you hear me now? Yeah! Okay. The important part, and I think I showed do it on the whiteboard. The last remark I think is very helpful. Quiescent letters become quiet at the end of a syllable. So anytime a word starts with Hey, Yud, Vav, or Aleph, and you get an article or an inseparable preposition, or the combination of those two, these letters go from the beginning of a word, thereby the beginning of a syllable, to the end of a syllable. And then you have to apply all the rules. Then you apply the rules. And rule number 1 is rule of Shwa. Rule number 2 is quiescent. And rule number 3 is compensating length. That means quiescent letter become quiet at the end of a syllable and the previous vowel lengthens. That means different color so that you can understand. A petach becomes a kamets. A segol becomes a tsere. The chirek and the yud do not change so much because a chirek remains a chirek and the cholam also remains. So it's especially with these two, the petach becomes a kamets and the tsere of a segol becomes a tsere. Well, all these will be saved at the end, so no, not to worry. All these pictures will be saved and put in the folder. This ends our lesson. We covered a lot. Next time I maybe start again with Quiescent Letters to help to get a better understanding, to hear it for the second time or third time. You can always look at the lessons in the Animated Hebrew Dropbox folder. You can do the exercises that will help you understand. And remember, we do this so that when we read a Hebrew Bible, you can see at the interlinear text and try to understand what is going on there, why it is written that way, and what some deeper meanings can be there. I used it in the conference last week about light. For instance, it's changed from ha-or to la-or. And because of the understanding I had, I could add some meaning to that change from delight into a movement towards light. So that means something, and I could base on that give some extra explanation what is going on there. So it helped me, just as one practical example, it helped me to understand Genesis 1 verse 4, when it said, and God called the light day. But it doesn't say delight, it says la-or. That means that there is an inseparable preposition plus an article. It's something more than just delight. It's towards the light or for the light. So that helped me. And we are not becoming translators of Hebrew text. That's not our goal. Our goal is when you want to study scripture and you go into the interlinear version, then you can see the letters and now you start distinguishing all these marks and you get a better understanding and possible other meanings from the same text. And when you see a translation, you say, well, they translated it this way, but it can also mean something else. So I wish you good luck. And for those of you who want to have more, there is now a session with Dr. O going on, or starting, or whatever, on the Activate Academy. And I hope to see you next week, where we do, at 7:30, we do the Dutch grammar lessons. And later on, we go with Hebrew. And we are almost at the end of chapter 6, and that is the basis. And then we start really doing with nouns and verbs, etc. So we almost have the foundation of the 6 lessons of the book. And when we did this, my wife and I did this 3 years ago, we benefited so much from these 6 lessons. And it helped us to simply understand more from interlinear, and without even knowing what all these transitions of verbs and nouns were. Just the first 6 lessons helped us already so much. And I'm looking forward to do with you the next week and the weeks before. weeks after that. Okay? Shalom. God bless you. See you next time. Bye-bye.